Alright, welcome to Season 2 of Bragging Rights. This week I've got Chris O'Brien of the Lost Legion with me. He's
Hello.
playing his Skaven. We're going to be doing a 2,500 point battle. So Chris, you've been on the show before. You played your Dark Elves last time. What have you been up to for, I guess it's been over a year?
Over a year. Yeah, I've been working on getting some new additions to the Skaven army I'll be using today done. They've been my primary tournament army for the past 2 years or so. And in between then, I've been collecting a Tomb King's army, getting them assembled and primed, and figuring out a color scheme for them. I think I have something that'll work pretty well. And just doing the odd bits of work on, like some High Elves, some Bretonnians, other armies that I have kicking around.
Cool. Have you played a lot of tournaments in the last year?
I've been to about 3 or 4 tournaments. I tend to go to the Conflict GT, the Colonial, and the Crossroad GTs. There's also a new one that started called the Border Raids in Philadelphia, so I like going to that one. That was really neat.
Yeah, I'm thinking about going to that this year. I'm not quite sold on it yet, mainly because the demon army is not allowed, period.
Yes, no demons.
Yeah, it's my best painted army, so going to a GT, I usually like to bring demons. Even if it was heavily comped, I'd still bring it just for the paint score.
Your Orcs and Goblins are in pretty good shape. Like, you brought them to a GT before.
Yeah, that was Colonial. The first Colonial I ever went to, I think 2009, I brought them, and they were all right. I think if I finish the updates that I'm planning on doing to them, I think I could bring them out. I plan on rebasing the whole army and adding a few units. I've already added some to it over the last year, and I've built from the ground up a Ghost Tomb King army, and finished off my Ogres for the moment, and I've also started work on Warhammer Ancients army, and received my Celtic-themed Beastman army too. So, got a lot of new armies to use for this season.
That's right. You're going to be using those, I thought, for this battle report.
Well, I originally had planned to use the Beastmen, but unfortunately not all the models have arrived yet. I commissioned the army from Brian Johnson of the Jervis Johnsons, and unfortunately still missing a few models, so I can't quite field it yet, although I'm excited to get it out eventually.
Yeah, I think once we drag them back from playing War Machines, then we might see them back on the scene.
Yeah, if anybody sees Brian Johnson, ask him to finish my giant and mail it to me, please. Alright, well, let's talk about your army, Chris.
Okay, this is basically the army that I just used at the Crossroads GT out in Horses, New York. Did very well out there in painting and battle and sportsmanship. The army itself is a little core heavy, and it's a little more lean towards fighting. A lot of the Skaven builds out there are relying on big blocks of slaves and then lots of shooting. But I wanted to get a little more of a combat mix in there. Starting with some of the core units, we've got 31 Storm Vermin, full command, shields, and the standard of leadership. They're accompanied by a Warpfire Thrower, and 24 Clan Rats with full command, and shields accompanied by a Poison Wind Mortar.
Now, with the leadership banner, what does that make your leadership with a character, and what does it make it without one?
So, on their own, the Storm Vermin are leadership 5, so 6 with the banner, and then you add in strength and numbers. If you have the Warlord in there, he's base lead 7, which gets increased to 8. So he only needs 2 ranks to have leadership 10. I don't normally bring the standard of leadership on the Storm Vermin like that, but that's because in the past I was fielding them 5 wide and deep, and for a combat unit, they really didn't seem to do much that way. So I thought for this time around, hoard them out, get 3 ranks fighting, and then you're going to be giving up some of your leadership issues, so that's why I threw that extra pip of banner in there for leadership.
Yeah, it's a nasty little unit for the price you paid for it.
It fights really well, I found, at the Crossroads. It did a really good job.
Yeah, the 20mm bases.
Clan Rats, they're a little small. They're what I usually field them as, but as this army was progressing, I mainly just kind of wanted a bunker to keep my wizards in and out of combat, so, 5x5 is pretty good. They'll have the ranks and his high leadership, and they're not meant to be out in the front fighting anyway. Now we have 2 units of slaves, 30 and 33 strong with musicians, and giant rats, 21 of them, and 4 pack masters. I've never really done the rap darts. I know a lot of people like them, and I know they have their uses, but the biggest problems I see with them is causing leadership tests in my armies when they inevitably get shot or magicked up.
Will you explain the rat darts for some of the people that don't know the term?
A rat dart is, so the minimum unit size for a giant rat pack is 5 and a pack master. So commonly people will take the minimum size, which is very, very cheap, and use it to redirect or to march block things. Not as much now in 8th edition, but just go out and get in the way to harass things. And they're super cheap, so they don't, you can take a bunch of them. The slaves, as far as numbers of them, I've fielded them like in groups of 25 recently, and they were okay. They died real fast. So I think 30 gives you a little more durability to stand up, be a tar pit for a while, and to get your other units into position. The giant rats at 17 and 3 were fine. I like having them. They're extremely fighty for what you'd think. And for this time out, I was like, let's put a few more bodies in there, give them, again, a little more durability. They kick out a lot of attacks. All right, Team Cloak and Team Dagger, for anybody who reads my reports on the Warhammer forum. These are my gutter runners with poison weapons. Looking really good in this picture, I must say.
Yeah, remind people what your Warhammer forum handle is.
So yeah, I post on the Warhammer forum as Silas7, and if I go to a tournament, I do up some battle reports and throw them online, because everybody likes looking at battle reports and looking at tactical things that go on. Cool looking figures. And I like telling stories, so. Here is an unusual choice, Rat Ogres. Again, there's a mix of 4th and 5th edition Rat Ogres there, like on the left-hand side. You've got the old Bone Ripper model from Thorek. You got like 6th edition or so Rat Ogres, the guy with the 3 metal bits in his hand. And then there's 4 of the Blood, Isle of Blood boxed set Rat Ogres in there. They were all repainted and rebased for this event, and man, they look a lot better now than they did. It's, as I've been fielding the Rat Ogres, I've been trying to test them out. They've got some major flaws, with low leadership. Not that great to hit in combat, weapon skill 3, but the Master Bread is a real godsend, which we'll see later on. And they just gradually fielding them in bigger and bigger units, until I found 8 of them is enough to really do a lot of damage. But you still have to treat them pretty delicately. They're not something like a group of chosen you can just stick out there and take a charge with. Here are the rares. Doomwheel and Yaugl, my abomination. Usually I've been fielding a Warp Lightning Cannon as well among my rares, but really over the past year, I tend to only bring 1 to an event, and it does not do that much for me. Occasionally it does something spectacular. More often than not, it dies in the first round or two, because other people have infiltrators or other things to remove war machines.
Yeah, Furies and Harpies love little units like that. It's easy points.
So this time, the Doomwheel, fights pretty well. It can do some spectacular things as well, because it's doing D6 wounds when it hits, same way the Warp Lightning Cannon does, and it's much, much more durable. So you just go with these 2 rares. Character selection, we have Ratticus. Again, anyone who's been following my reports or seen me at GTs for the past couple of years know that I have been using him as my general throughout. He is backed up by Onimaus, the BSB. This time, he is packing the 2-up armor save and the Luckstone. This particular, for an event coming up, certain items have been comped out of the list. The Doom Rocket and Storm Banner, which are pretty much must-haves in all your Skaven armies, have been disallowed. So I've had to fill up the points with other things. So we have on the magical support end, the Grey Seer. He is just packing a scroll and a 5-up ward save. Again, it's been an instance of fielding things with him and kind of seeing, all right, I don't need this item really much, because he's not going to see combat this often, so he's been kind of pared down for putting points in other units. The Warlock in the center there with the funny backpack. He's my condenser, so he's a level 1. Just takes Warp Lightning all the time. And the little guy in front is Warlock Engineer, no spell casting levels, and Skaven Brew. This is something brand new I'm testing out for the army.
So for this report, I decided to really rally and get my Ogres painted. This was a really good motivator for me because sometimes it's hard to do the finishing touches on an army, and you just have unpainted models sitting for weeks or even longer. That was the case with this army. I've had my man-eaters and my second butcher just waiting for a coat of paint, and I still hadn't come up with a way to field Sabertusk. So this morning I thought, why not? We'll do Ogre's rematch against Chris, because last time it was pretty embarrassing when I played that game. So for core units, I did, of course, the very cheap deployment, 25 points, 10 Noblars. They're not any better than they used to be, and in fact, I'm really missing the ability to have a small skirmishing scout unit. I felt like that was a really great asset that's gone now, unfortunately. I brought a pretty big unit of bulls. I don't know that I'd do this if I had my choice of models, but I already had these guys painted up, and I wasn't about to paint up over 300 points of guys on top of what I was already painting, so kind of had to make a sacrifice and take this unit. I do plan to put Iron Fists on them and shields, though, to update them for the new book. I got a unit of 6 Iron Guts here. They're really great troops. I wish they were weapon skill 4. Unfortunately, they're hanging out at 3. I did give them the Dragonhide banner, which I think you're going to see a lot. It allows you to reroll all 1s for wounding, to hit, and armor saves on the turn in which you charge. And on top of that, it's got another ability. You can unleash a breath weapon for 2d6 strength 3s, and any unit hit by that, not necessarily wounded, but hit by that, becomes always strikes last for the next turn, which is really great. I have 3 Sabertusks, which I think a lot of people are fielding single Sabertusks. It's great in this army, having little cheap redirectors and objective grabbers. And you can see in this photo, the glue still hasn't dried on the flocking. I was still painting when Chris showed up for this game. I kind of spent the afternoon trying to get these 3 and my man-eaters done.
You sort of got the equivalent there of the rat darts with your Sabertusks. So.
Yeah, definitely. The leadership 4 on these guys makes them a real liability in some cases, but I'm liking them. I think they're fun. I like the models too. I used to use these 3 models, the Tomb Kingdoms models, as Yetis. And Yetis did get a nice little boost in the new book, but I don't think that they're quite good enough. So I've decided that I'm going to start fielding these as man-eaters. Not just regular man-eaters, because, of course, the army wouldn't want these 3 guys hanging around them, but they're scouting man-eaters. So it's kind of the theme is, I don't know, these guys are wild undead things that are somehow connected to the army. I don't know. I might have to bring them back to being Yeti. We'll see. I brought 5 Iron Blasters, or Flamers, as everybody's calling them. And I also brought 4 Man-Eaters with Brace of Pistols, Full Command, and Flaming Banner. For their special abilities, they have both Sniper and Poison. This is a pretty popular choice. I think a lot of people have seen this unit around. It's nothing new, but I'm really excited about fielding it. It's a nice little wizard sniper unit, basically. It's the plan for it. And with the Flaming Banner, it's got nice answers for regen units. You can start out by popping a shot from these guys, and then you follow it up with a cannon shot. Speaking of cannons, 2 Iron Blasters. I know I said no double rares, but I love these guys, and it's hard for me to fit 20. It's hard for me to do a 2,500 point list without doing some duplication of rares and taking little extra in characters.
Matt's house, Matt's rules.
Yeah. For my characters, I took a Fire Belly, who's upgraded to level 2, and gave him the Hellheart, which is some great magic defense. A lot of restrictions, at least for... One of the restrictions for Conflict GT this year is if you take the Hellheart, you can't take the Dispel Scroll on top of that. So I've decided to abide by that rule, and I have not taken a Dispel Scroll anywhere. The Hellheart, though, is too much fun to pass up. I also took a BSB. He's got himself a 3-up armor save, because he's got heavy armor, an Iron Fist, and the Trickster's Helm. The Trickster's Helm's kind of cool. It makes opponents reroll to wound, and when you have high toughness like he does and immunity to Killing Blow, can't go wrong with the reroll to wound. For my Tyrant, I took the Maw Seeker to give him +1 toughness, which I forgot through most of the game, unfortunately. And he also has a 3-up armor save and a 2-up versus Flaming. Alright, time to roll for spells. I rolled up Fireball and Piercing Bolts of Burning. Both are magic missiles, unfortunately, and had I been a little smarter, I would have kept my original roll of 1, which I believe I still could have cast while I was in combat.
But specifically for casting on units in combat.
Yeah, so, oh well. Hindsight's 20/20. And for your spells, Chris?
We got Warp Lightning on the level 1, and he's always going to default to that. And for the Seer, we rolled up 3 spells in Lore of Ruin. As you can see there, that's Warp Lightning, which is Duplication, Scorch, and Crack's Call. And my 1 Pestilence Lore was Blessed with Filth. So, Skaven, pretty weak overall, but giving him poison attacks is great. And Scorch, not as useful on this army since he's got larger bases, but still, it's a great spell. Crack's Call, very good against Ogres with their low initiative. So, since I had a spell, I could choose anything I want. Death Frenzy and Blessed with Filth go together really well. It's giving myself lots of extra chances for poison attacks.
Definitely. And before we start the report, I wanted to talk about a couple odd choices you had in your army. One, Ratticus.
Ratticus he's a warlord. I've gone with that idea for a long time. I think I looked up the pun somewhere on Spartacus, and his companion was Onimus, I think. So the Ratticus and Onimus came out of that. He's on a war litter, which is not a very common choice for him. Basically, he's on a piece of balsa wood being carried by 4 storm vermin to fit the description that's in the book. And I grabbed a bunch of shields from all of my other armies that I have. So right in the front there, you can see there's a Warriors of Chaos shield. There's a Grail Knight shield next to him. On the very back there is, I believe, a Dark Elf shield. And there's also High Elf and Empire bits on there too. Ratticus is sporting for a kit. He has a Sword of Might, so he hits a magical attack. The Crown of Command, the Dawnstone, and the Dragon Helm. So it's a 2-up rerollable armor save. No ward, it's a little dangerous, but in most cases the armor save is sufficient. And the Crown of Command is there to, keep that fighting unit in, because unlike other armies, Skaven effectiveness goes down really fast in combat, especially when you're low on ranks.
Definitely. Alright, for terrain, it's pretty simple. We got 2 forests, 4 hills, a couple barricades, and a building in an inaccessible location. And then we've also got a little cesspool over in the far northeast corner there. For deployments, I had to deploy first, and I put down my 10 Nobblars.
And unsurprisingly, I led off with a group of slaves.
Next up, got a dog. My thinking here is just put these guys in the center because they don't matter, and I'm just going to use them as redirectors anyway.
Taking a look at the field and the terrain with a forest in the center and that pond on my side, which could result in some difficult terrain tests for my guys, I decided then that the bulk of the army was going to be in the large clear area on my left-hand side. So my second unit of slaves went down there.
I placed another dog and another dog.
For my part, on the far left, I dropped the giant rat pack, and then the doom wheel went in the center. I have had the tendency to put things like the doom wheel on the extreme flanks, with the idea of sweeping around into the center or getting into the flanks or rear, but quite often the random movement would mean the doom wheel is sitting out the combats. So I deployed him much more centrally so that he could get anywhere in a quicker time.
Well, at this point, I have to start dedicating my units because my trash deployments are down. So I put down my bulls in the center, and my Iron Guts, I debated this for a while, but I ended up putting them over on the right flank.
And for myself, next up came the Storm Vermin. It's a little bit near the end of the woods, but again, still pretty centrally located. The Rat Ogres went down next. Again, to go off and face off against the Iron Guts and keep a couple units in front of the Rat Ogres. Those units are there to help prevent them from taking a frenzied charges that I don't want, and for being a steadfast block to hold somebody up while the Rat Ogres pounce on the flank.
Lead Belchers are next. In a woods, I don't think there's any reason for them to be in the woods, it just happened to be in my deployment zone.
I'll put them somewhere. Next up for me were my unit of Clan Rats, hiding behind a group of slaves and staying near the Storm Vermin. Again, the goal for those Clan Rats is to stay behind everybody else and just be there for support.
We're just down to a few deployments now, so I put down my Iron Blaster in a spot where I figured he's going to have a nice vantage to everything.
And right across from there is Yagle the Abomination. Again, I mentioned before about how I was putting things on the flank, but this battle was really shaping up to take place all in the center and right-hand side. So there's some Lead Belchers and Iron Blaster and Iron Guts and a lot of choice targets for Yagle to go plow into. I guess now we're down to character deployment. So in the horde of rats, we have Ratticus in the corner there, and he is joined by the Warlock with the Skaven Brew to boost up that unit. Here we have in the Clan Rats, Grey Seer is back there, along with Anamouse the BSB, and my level 1 Warlock.
So I'm ready from here to deploy the rest of my army, basically. I throw an Iron Blaster and the 4 Man-Eaters right in the center of my line. The thinking here is that the Man-Eaters are going to use their flaming to turn off the regen of the A-Bomb, and the 2 cannons are going to finish him off from there. I put my BSB and my Tyrant into the Iron Guts unit, and I forgot to mention earlier, the Tyrant has the Sword of Striking and the Crown of Command. So if I do get unfortunate and don't kill the A-Bomb, my Iron Guts will be able to go finish it off and then keep going, hopefully to encounter those frenzied Rat Ogres in the future.
I see you've avoided any of the sort of typical Ogre Death Star builds that had been very popular and even are still now a little bit, like 10 or 11 or so plus characters.
Yeah, it kind of pains me to play a list like this where you have so many points in units with so few models. I'm not typically the style of player that goes for builds even like this, and I can't imagine playing with an Ogre Death Star build. It totally goes against my style. I love redirection, and I love gumming up people's best units and refusing to fight them, and I don't want to present targets for that for my opponent. I don't want my opponent basically to say no to my Death Star. When I see a unit of 12 Bulls or 12 Iron Guts, I'm not the least bit concerned because I know that whatever redirectors I've got will hold them up for 4 turns, and by the time they hit me, it'll be too late. For Scouts, I throw down my Man-Eaters. They have Stubborn, Scout, and Great Weapons. Let me know if you think that I'm pushing the counts as a little bit too far, but I think it fits the overall theme of my army. I'm not going to say anything else about that.
You know, if you like green stuff them up a little bit, they could make a nice basic armature for something. You can ogreize them more if you want.
True, make them less undead and more monstery.
I know that, having played Matt in the past, he is a big fan of using scouts, and you've got to be really careful when you deploy that you don't leave positions like this open, where you can get those scouts in the background. But, again, we were deploying basically in the center and left-hand side, and with my Warp Fire throw over there and a few characters, I thought I had a decent counter.
Alright, for the roll for first, I obviously don't get the +1 because when you have scouts now and your opponent doesn't, you lose the +1 to go first. Now, a lot of people don't play it this way, but at the last couple tournaments I've been to, it was ruled that you lose the +1, and I was unable to find in the rulebook anywhere that said that you didn't lose the +1. So it's a divergence from the way scouts used to work.
Yeah, my impression was that they didn't. They were a completely separate thing, but
yeah, it might be hidden in there somewhere, and I'm just glossing over it. If anybody can find the rule that says that the scouts don't count towards your deployments, let us know.
I'll send you a shiny gold Noblar.
Yeah. So we both rolled 2s. Chris takes the first turn.
All right. With these scouting guys on my flank, I decide to, after having fed the Skaven brew to the unit, my warlock runs out there to do what he's supposed to do at this point, which is get in the way of things. The result I rolled for Skaven brew was the rabid result, which basically gave me Death Frenzy, and also meant that I was going to be losing models each turn, which meant Storm Vermin had to get into combat double quick. So they advance. Storm Vermin advance forward. The Warp Fire Thrower stays where it is to go lay down some fire on the Man-Eaters. On the other side of the field, the Slaves, Giant Rats, move up slowly. Yalgo gets a pretty average roll and moves forward. I keep, the large ranked units near him so that they can assist each other in combat. Rat Ogre's still hanging out in the back. The Doom Wheel is going across the front of my line. Again, if in the past, people who use Doom Wheels, you will have noticed this, they tend to go zooming out towards the enemy. They get charged by something on a pretty medium range, like a chariot or what have you, lose combat and get shattered and thrown back into your line. So you don't want to advance too far forward with them. But we've got the Storm Vermin there for support, some slaves nearby to absorb lightning in case things go wonky. And he's pretty far back. I think he's pretty safe from any assaults this turn. You see the Clan Rats also have turned in the back to put their attention on the Man-Eaters and to give my spellcaster some line of sight to them. Magic time, 5 dice for me. Matt gets channel, the first of many. And we go into the magic phase. Start off with Warp Lightning, trying to blow up some Man-Eaters that gets spelled, and an irresistible Scorch goes off. So that will end up killing off one of the Man-Eaters right off the bat. And as for the magical result for me, it was a feedback, so I think both casters took a wound. So again, not bad at all, really.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with that. I'd trade a Man-Eater for 2 wounds any day.
Then on to the shooting phase, the Warp Fire Thrower landed a nice, tasty shot on them and didn't do any wounds, unfortunately. These things happen. Mortar shot at them as well and scattered off table, and that brings the turn over to Matt.
Yeah, my turn. I declared charge on the Engineer. I wasn't sure if I should or not, but in the end, I just thought, hey, I might hit it, might overrun into the Flamethrower guy behind it, and that might lead to another overrun into the Clan Rats, so I went for it. For the rest of my army, I did no charges, but I moved my dogs up, planning to lead that frenzied unit all over the board, because when they have frenzy, they must overrun when they win a combat. And, of course, they're going to be beating my dogs in combat.
That's probably the biggest downside to Frenzy now. People said that anything didn't matter as much because you could resist charges, and you can still, but the mandatory overruns do mean you can get let out into some bad positions.
Yeah, I love leading frenzied units around. The rest of my army advances very cautiously because I'm afraid of that Doom Wheel, and I also don't want to get too exposed to that frenzied unit, just in case he rolls a really low overrun and is able to still have line of sight to one of my units next turn. The shooting stuff, I'll advance to 6 inches so I can still shoot, and my primary target is that A-bomb. I want to get it gone as soon as possible. My Iron Guts move up, baiting a charge from the A-bomb. I figure I'll lose a couple Ogres from that, but I should be able to beat it. My General and my BSB are particularly apt at surviving an A-bomb's attacks. I move a dog up there. I don't even know why. I think just next turn I plan to move it around the back and help lead that Frenzied Rat Ogre unit around. During the magic phase, I get myself 7 dice to Chris's 3. And with superiority, I decided to cast both my magic missiles. And first one got dispelled. Second one I didn't get off because I was stupid and pumped it up all the way to the top. I should have done the medium fireball in retrospect, but oh well. For the shooting phase, my Man-Eaters, of course, unleashed into the A-bomb before any other shooting takes place. Fortunately, I only hit once, and then that one hit was not a wound, so he still has his regen up, which is bad news for me.
Yago breathes a sigh of relief.
And if I'm not able to get a flaming on him before he dies, there's a chance he'll come back. So I'm gonna just basically keep trying to shoot at him every turn. My iron blasters, my lead belchers, great shots at the A-bomb, figuring I'd do quite a bit of damage. End up only doing one wound, unfortunately. Both my cannons do not do anything spectacular. One of them doesn't get a wound by rolling 1, and the other one gets 1 wound on the A-bomb. So the A-bomb is still looking pretty with 4 wounds left.
Mm-hmm.
In the combat with the Man-Eaters, I obviously easily kill the engineer, and I fail to roll the 9 that I needed to overrun into the Warpfire Thrower. This is a pretty big bummer because it makes me think I'm probably going to lose my Man-Eaters, but we'll see. Your turn, Chris.
All right. Ratticus starts off by passing a leadership test and keeping the unit from charging into the Saber Tusk, getting a little freedom of movement. I look over at the setup there. I see the big, nasty unit of Iron Guts and double characters in there. Then I look and see the Saber Tusk and say, yeah, I'm going for that. So Yago declares a charge into the Saber Tusk. The Doom Wheel, well, it doesn't declare a charge. He moves randomly, but it ends up being a charge. And in the same vein, the Doom Wheel takes a rather long random move and slams into the Man-Eaters and the Fire Belly, which I was pretty happy about. I would have probably been equally as happy stopping nearby and zapping them, but now I get to zap them into impact hits. The Team Cloak, Gutter Runner's team, the first one, shows up on the table. For a moment, I debated putting him back to deal with the Man-Eaters that were scouting in behind me, but then I decided to focus on the shooting elements in his army, since that is primarily what they're here to deal with. So here we have the rest of the movement of the turn. Slaves have all moved up aggressively to bait some charges and to hold people up for counter charges. Giant Rats are kind of doing the same. The Storm Vermin have moved in such a way that next time when we charge, our overrun will take us in towards his army rather than away from it. And in the back, Clan Rats have backed away from the Warpfire Thrower because they had some kind of premonition that something bad might happen. Magic-wise, a little stronger phase this turn. Another channel for Matthew, but 7 dice for me. Still pretty good. Onwards to spells. The Warp Lightning does go off this time and puts 2 wounds on the Man-Eaters in the back. The attempt to Scorch to help finish them off is handily dispelled. And I end up using Crack's Call, but the Man-Eaters are particularly adroit and just leap over the crack on the ground.
Yeah, Initiative 3 gives me a 50-50, and I was able to get it.
We move onwards to shooting. The dice on the screen here are the indication of Team Cloak's shots at the Iron Blaster. So you see 2 poisons there, and then 1 wound on a 6. The Iron Blasters are pretty tough with 5 wounds and a 4 of armor save, so 1 wound is not the end of the world by any means. Oh, that premonition we talked about? Something going wrong? Well, the Warpfire Thrower rolled itself a misfire, and the result was the move randomly and then blow up. So, luckily for me, it moved randomly right into the Man-Eaters.
And explodes.
Which was pretty happy.
Yeah.
And the result is the 1 Man-Eater is destroyed, because you gotta love those D3 wounds on the Warpfire Thrower. And the survivor, with 1 remaining, legs it for the table edge.
Yeah, he doesn't like Leadership 8 very much.
The mortar fires. It was going to shoot at the Man-Eater, but now we need a choicer target. And it gets a direct hit on his unit of bulls, and does
3
believe 3 wounds.
Yeah, which I was very surprised about.
Takes 1 down.
Very upset about, actually.
Okay, the Doom Wheel itself, it rips off some lightning. This where Matt also finds out that lightning is D6 wounds, and it drops one of the Man-Eaters. It's no great surprise to see that the Saber Tusk is ripped apart by Yago. And yet another man-eater is down from impact hits and little rats fighting. There's also 2 wounds you see that done to the fire belly.
Yeah, in this case, with the impact hit, since we only had 4 models left, we had to assign the hits to each model. And I decided to assign 2 to the fire belly, thinking he had a good chance of surviving. And I wanted to preserve what little I had left of my man-eater unit. So it's my turn to swing. I've got poison attacks on these guys. They have base 4 attacks, plus they each have an extra hand weapon. I'm able to get 3 poison and then 1 wound, and kind of sad facing it because realizing I only did 4 wounds to it. And then I remembered that I still have a champion alive. Champion throws his 1 extra attack, gets a poison. Chris fails to save. Doom wheel dead. And that starts my turn. My turn, I just declared some charges. I just figured I wanted to engage so I was a little less vulnerable to his magic, and also I just wanted to roll some dice at this point. I declared a charge: bulls on slaves, the man-eaters on slaves, and the lead belchers on the giant rats. He holds on all 3. So all 3 charges made it, and 2 of those 3, the man-eaters and the lead belchers, rolled 10, so they were able to get the impact hits, which is a great little boon. My fleeing guy decides to keep fleeing and runs off further. I'm not too worried. I actually like the fact that he's still moving because it keeps him away from shooting. In the magic phase, I roll high and I channel, and then I realize I just have 2 magic missiles. So magic phase, unfortunately, is over. My cannon, my iron blaster that's still shooting, lets me down and lands right on top of a packmaster. I had guessed 6 in front, and then I found out afterwards that it's standard innate to guess more like 10 in front. I haven't played with cannons in 8th really at all, so I'm still getting used to them. In the close combats, I think it's pretty obvious who's going to win these. I take off a ton of slaves and take back, I think, 1 wound, but he's still steadfast. I needed to kill 1 more model, which I just couldn't, and he holds. In the center, my man-eaters, one of them gets killed, which was pretty disappointing, but I, again, win the combat. And the A-bomb, of course, plows through my iron blaster. He didn't have a chance. I didn't really realize when I was placing him there that the dog was going to allow you to do a nice overrun into him, and he's pretty vulnerable in close combat. The lead belchers, of course, were able to beat the rats. They did a ton of wounds.
That's a lot of dead rats.
Yeah, between the impacts, the stomps, and all the attacks. And I actually only took back 1 wound, and I was able to save it with my light armor. It was great.
So as you see there, I'm down to 10 giant rats left. Had I been using my old configuration of 17 by 3, I'd be left with just the front rank, which means they would not be steadfast and would have...
Well, they do run away, and I elect to reform instead of chase them down. I'm not sure if that was the correct choice. In retrospect, I think I might have been better off just chasing them down. The reason why is I reformed, and now the A-bomb is able to turn to face me, hit me, probably win, almost definitely win, and then overrun into my iron blaster. And since he's going to win anyway, and I can't stand and shoot, I think I would have been better off to run down the rats and just take the rear charge from the A-bomb if the A-bomb decides that he wants to charge me. With the lead belchers painted, I'm going to continue to field them, but they're really letting me down with their inability to stand and shoot. I think that's huge. It's huge that they can't do that, and it really takes away from their flexibility and their viability too, I think.
Well, I think you can help that out because you've got, as you said, a lot of the saber tusks in there as redirectors. So if you sort of dedicate a couple saber tusks to hanging out around the lead belchers, you can keep on preventing people from charging against them.
True.
Let them let them deal with the little saber tusks and keep nailing away, because multiple D6 shots will put some damage out, or should.
All right, it's your turn, and right off the bat, I've got my unit of Iron Guts within range for your Frenzy check, and I'm just crossing my fingers that you're going to fail that check.
Which I do fail initially, and then use the BSB to reroll and succeed on the check. So as you can see, the usual screeners for the Rat Ogres are not in the way, but the backup plan for that is to keep the BSB nearby, or in some occasions the Storm Vermin, so you're passing on some leadership to help them stick around.
And like I've said before in this episode, I'll probably say it again, one of my favorite things about 8th is leading these frenzied troops around. And one of the best things about it in a big tournament is that a lot of players really don't expect to have their frenzied troops be as vulnerable as they used to be back in 7th. And they're certainly not as vulnerable as they used to be, but it's pretty easy if you get the right tools to keep a frenzied unit out of combats that matter, and also have them pointed in the direction you want.
So the Storm Vermin decide they're not going to mess around with the dogs anymore. They're going to go in there and clear them out so they can go on and kill more important things. I believe it's my only charge for the round. The Giant Rats rally on a 4, spectacularly, and there they are, turning around and get back in the thick of things. Yael again looks at his options, and again is not eager to go tangle with the Iron Guts. So he goes off into the Lead Belchers, because as you can see, there's another overrun there into another Iron Blaster. So he can just keep on rolling through the enemy.
Yeah, just a bad choice by me.
So in he goes. Team Cloak scampers into the woods. Again, I had a brief thought of just sitting back and pelting and annoying the Iron Guts, and thought, no, we can be a little more effective than that. So into the woods they go to shoot at the other Iron Blaster. So most of the front lines there are in combat. The Clan Rats are moving up in the back. The Rat Ogres have moved to the side 3 inches to get them a little further away from the Iron Guts. Again, they're a big hammer unit, but they're still very fragile, so I'm trying to exercise a lot of patience with them before committing them into a fight. It's about time for my magic phase. I go to reach for my dice, and Matt busts out the Hellheart. This caused me quite a bit of damage at the Crossroad GT, where my Seer was cascaded into the warp through that item. So I got very, very nervous all of a sudden.
And I roll a 4, giving me 20 inches.
Yep. So the first of the miscasts I get is a 7 on Singe. So I had moved my Seer and BSB from the other rank because I didn't want them to get charged by his Saber Tusk and picked out. The downside of this now is that they are in base-to-base contact with Singe, so each of them are taking a Strength 10 hit. So one Clan Rat dies, my Seer takes a second wound, and the BSB takes his first. Next result is more feedback, which, as you know, interferes with electronic devices as well as mages. So Singe dies from this. The Grey Seer makes his ward save this time, and as Animaus is not a mage, he doesn't care. So down my one shooty mage, but the Seer is still sticking around. So again, could be much worse.
Hellheart is great, and I mean, a lot of people think it's too good, but I think that with a lot of Ogre builds, it's not making. I don't think it's making my list over the top. I think it's just making my list survivable through a magic phase.
And it's probably one of the harder items out there. You know, any kind of item like the puppet or the cupped hands that throw miscasts around or alter your miscast tables make people nervous because it can result in, you know, killing off a mage right off the bat with one shot.
That's true.
But you could as easily roll, you know, a couple 7s and just kill off a bunch of Clan Rats. So, all depends. Like this time, it took out a mage, which is kind of what you'd expect it to do. This round, we've been rolling for the Rabid result on my Storm Vermin, which means they take D6 wounds at the end of each phase. I had taken only 1 wound for the first couple turns of the game. But this turn, third turn, it all came back and 6 storm vermin exploded. Onward to Magic, now that we've cleaned up the mess left by Singe and the destroyed storm vermin. Now that we have some slave units in combat, I get to focus on the combat end of things. So I started off by trying to grant them some poison attacks. That got dispelled, but I did manage to get Death Frenzy through. So now we've got 20 attacks going off against those man-eaters. In the back, more poison sling bullets. I love those things so much. They put out so much damage. 2 wounds get through on the Iron Blaster. Over here, we have me about ready to take off a bunch of slaves fighting the bulls. As you can see, we lose about 10 of them in the combat. I may have done 2 wounds to the bulls, which they promptly save with those fancy Battle Report and Cold Steel Merc dice.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I get the free reform at the end of this combat, and all I did was moved my top left corner up a little bit to get me within 12 inches of the clan rats who I plan to charge next turn if all goes well.
Moving over to our frenzied rats, they get the job done. They kill the last man-eater, so it brings them down to just the fire belly.
Yeah, it's pretty bad news for me because he doesn't have much of a chance of winning against a ranked unit. With the man-eater standing there, I think I could have won, but unfortunately I just do a couple wounds, fail my leadership, and then also get run down.
Oh!
Allowing your slaves to overrun into the Iron Blaster.
Next combat up, Yaugl, once again, bringing a lot of pain. He did impact hits, killed 1 lead belcher with those. I then rolled up the feed result and got a massive 3, 3, and 2 wounds. So I chowed down on 2 whole ogres, so 3 whole ones dead and a couple wounds extra.
Yeah, I might have done 1 wound back. I think maybe 2, but it wasn't enough. I broke, I ran, and again I was run down. And this time the A-bomb is not able to hit the Iron Blaster because of the angle. Luckily, he hits the slaves before he hits the Iron Blaster. And combat with the dog, it's obvious.
Yeah, he made me roll the dice, though, and so it was all nice and legal. Saber just got chopped down. Yeah, and I did overrun.
You actually only did 2 wounds to him, so
there you go.
You know, 1 more failed dice, he would have lived to maybe kill your champion or something like that. All right, so now it's my turn. That low overrun on those frenzied storm vermin meant that they're still in the game and still a threat that I have to keep allocating resources to. For my charges, I get my bulls into the clan rats like I want to, and I charge my dog into that little mortar. Figured I'd get some pretty easy points on that. I need to roll a 9 to get into that, and I need a 6 on my bulls. I also declared a charge with my Iron Guts onto the fleeing rats, onto the newly rallied rats, which declare a flee. I then redirect into the slaves, which is where I wanted to hit in the first place. My thought on hitting the slaves is that I'll be able to get the Iron Blaster to to reform, and the Iron Guts will reform. Because I don't really like the position the Iron Guts are in at the moment anyway.
It does also pull the Iron Guts back in towards the center of your army where all the action is.
Right. And it gets the BSB over there and the leadership. The dog ends up failing his charge, unfortunately, but the bulls make it in, thank God. They're my big hope for this game because there's a lot of points in that clan rat unit. My Iron Guts are able to redirect and do hit the slaves. I rallied with my Man-Eater, finally. He's got 1 wound left, and he's thinking, phew, I'm going to survive this battle. Because there's nothing really over there, and he's in the clear. My plan is to just next turn go hide him. The bulls do not get their impact hits, but they do get in and...
well, no, they get impact hits, don't they? They don't just...
No, they got a 9. Oh,
yeah, they don't get the bonus impact hits.
Yeah, I'm not even...
Yeah, my seer's going, hey, weren't we supposed to not get into combat, guys? This is not the plan.
I move up my Noblars just to sacrifice to the Frenzy unit. I'm just trying to angle them away from the combat a little bit, and I'm hoping he rolls a big overrun. In the combat phase, because we're just skipping the magic phase, I make way with my Tyrant and my BSB. Unfortunately, the impact hits I do takes the BSB out of combat. So I'm left with just my Tyrant, and I'm really hoping that I get enough to make him lose Steadfast, because I really don't want him holding here. Luckily, he does no wounds to me, and I do a ton to him. He loses Steadfast, and of course he blows up and runs away.
Sadness.
Now I've got a choice of reforming with my Iron Guts to face the A-Bomb, I guess would be my probably first choice, or I can overrun. And with the overrun, I was hoping that I would hit the rats, and I was thinking in my mind that they weren't fleeing, and that I'd hit them and engage them and live for another turn. But when the slaves blew up, he was able to remove giant rats from the back rank, making it so that if I overran, I didn't hit them, which is just what happened.
Sneaky Skaven tricks.
This is actually kind of good for me, because I feel pretty safe in the A-Bomb here, because I don't think he's going to take the risk going into my BSB and my Tyrant. And I also think that the frenzied rat ogres are a pretty big threat if they get the charge on me, and they don't have the chance to charge me because your fleers are in the way. My Iron Blaster, though, is as good as dead standing in front of that A-Bomb. Alright, the Charging Bulls rolled a 9 and not a 10, so no D3 impact hits. My hope here is to kill off the characters and then overrun into the little Plague Wind, which will then have me facing the Rat Ogres, and it will also keep me out of line of sight of the Rat Ogres, which is double win. Stomps and impact hits kill clan rats, but I'm unable to put any successful wounds on the Grey Seer, who's on 1 wound, or the BSB, who's also on 1 wound.
In return, we kill 1 bull, and we remain steadfast and hold up the charge.
And pass the turn.
Top of 4. Storm Vermin don't be messing around with these little guys. But what you're going to do, you're going to go in and charge them and clean them up. So in they charge. Matt has really done a good game, as you said, about keeping the Storm Vermin away and feeding them lots of chaff. The upside of that is that the Storm Vermin are still alive. So I got some tricky charges here. I go through and double check my book to make sure everything is on the up and up. And I declare the Poison Wind Mortar to charge into the Iron Guts. This will clear up a path to allow the Rat Ogres to hit the flank of the Bulls. So getting them finally into combat to do some good.
I'm just crossing my fingers that mortar will fail the charge and only move a couple inches and then block up the Rat Ogre charge here.
When it comes down to it, all the charging units do connect, so the Rat Ogres do get into the flank of the Bulls. Yaugol does take the sort of easy charge and goes after the other Iron Blaster. And here we have all the charges being resolved. The rats continue to flee through the Bulls, make their dangerous terrain tests, and will hopefully rally a little later on. But the majority of the Skaven army is in combat now, with at least something or other. And Matt's rapidly running out of chaff to feed to the Storm Vermin. Magic phase is really big this turn. And there's some more, 5 or 6 more of the Storm Vermin down from Rabid. Another good reason that I decided to make them 31. So with no Fire Belly this turn, I've got a pretty clear run of the Magic phase. I start off with Blessed with Filth, which is dispelled. I do get Death Frenzy off again. The target this time is, I believe, the Clan Rats, to help boost them up in their fight against the Bulls. And finally, a Crack's Call from the Seer, which takes down 2 whole Bulls. Again, bringing things more into my control.
Yeah, this was a pretty bad phase for me, to say the least.
And here comes Team Dagger, showing up on the seal finally, behind that last man here who thought he was safe. And he's not safe.
Yeah, that's a bummer. I kind of forgot about them. I really love these units. I don't really like the rest of the way the Skaven army plays, so I don't think that I would like fielding a Skaven army, but I love this unit.
So, combat time. Yago the Abomination runs in and kills off the Iron Blaster, his second one of the game. His overrun takes him a little bit past the Iron Guts. So, after having cleared out quite a few units at this point, he is ready to strike and deal with the Iron Guts finally. The Noblars are wiped out. I'm so surprised.
Yeah, they were not able to attack back, unfortunately.
We have the combat ensues. There's frenzied attacks. Onomaus the BSB chops someone down with a halberd. Even the Seer does a wound. We get down to the champion, is the only guy left. With one wound left, and he saves it.
Yeah! That means I'm attacking with 4 wounds back and trying to kill that level 4. And succeeding!
Yes, the 5 up ward save. Finally lets Zim down, and the Seer is toast.
Yeah, I've got my guy on his side there, but he actually survives to flee, and the overrun results keep him alive. You happen to roll pretty low.
True that. Also, the fact of the Rat Ogre's position means that they aren't going to be able to catch him either, and they're going to be hung up behind the Poison Wind Mortar. The Poison Wind Mortar, not surprisingly, doesn't do a lot of damage and gets wiped out.
That allows me to reform. I decided to go a little wide for extra attacks against these Rat Ogres. And my thought here is I charge the Rat Ogres, hope I get average rolls and blow through them, and then overrun into the Clan Rats and again blow through them, hopefully. All right, my turn. I declare a charge here with the dogs into the rats. They have to declare a flee. I kind of just wanted to get them out of the way. And I declared a charge with my Iron Guts onto the Rat Ogres to hit them and then overrun into the Clan Rats. I decide not to redirect with the dog, so he just fails his charge and moves forward 5 or 6 inches. The Iron Guts, of course, make it in, and unfortunately they do not get their D3 impact hits. Had I had those D3 impact hits, I would have been really happy. I do rally with my one surviving bull, the double ones, very happy with that. And that's all I've got for my pre-combat turn, because I've got no mage, no shooting. In combat, I'm able to kill 3 Pack Masters on the impact hits. Then it's your attacks back on me.
So the Rat Ogres tear into them and bring down 3 whole Iron Guts.
Which is, pretty decent. I get no armor save against you, unfortunately. And with my attacks back, I'm just praying that I do enough to break you, and I'm able to pull down 4 Rat Ogres between my 2 characters and all the great weapon attacks. So I win this one.
So I roll my flee move, I get a whole 4.
And I'm able to match the 4. So not only do I overrun into the vulnerable Clan Rats, but I'm also running down the Rat Ogres. So this is a very good combat phase for me.
I was faced with a similar charge option at the last Grand Tournament I was at, where I had Iron Guts facing down Rat Ogres. And I decided not to jump in there and kind of go for the draw as opposed to push for the big win. And this kind of reinforces my decision on whether or not I should have done that.
Yeah, just a very nasty unit when it charges. I don't know that it's as nasty when it doesn't charge. The Dragonhide banner is really, really great, because you're wounding on 2s a lot of times, and my Tyrant's hitting on 2s, and being able to re-roll all 1s is just really huge. I learned that from 40k, the Space Wolves. All right, your turn.
All right, the Giant Rats continue to flee during their turn. The Abomination has got to go in there and try to rescue the Clan Rats. So I roll my move, little below average, so Yagle is not going to be playing this turn.
And had he made it in, that would have been certainly game over, I think.
The Storm Vermin turn around, quick look, and say that The field looks pretty empty, so they reform and head back towards that combat too. So now Matt's got 2 big combat units coming his way. Teams Cloak and Dagger move forward into the field a little bit. And we have no magic either. At this point, I think both of us are without mages. And Team Cloak does it again, gunning down the last champion there and giving me all the points for that unit. That's the thing about 8th edition, the fact that you need to kill an entire unit now to get the points. It can very easily lead to situations when you've got a unit that's worth a lot, it's down to a model or 2, and then that unit just runs away from the battle and keeps all those points alive. So to some people that seems disappointing, but it really just points out to the fact that you need to have support units and a little bit of shooting in there so that when you get a unit beaten down, you can finish it off wherever it goes. And again, the gutter runners are great for that.
Yeah.
This brings us over now to more combat. Anamouse declares a challenge, hoping that he can minimize some of the attacks on the Clan Rat unit. And I think he does do a wound, but he then gets crushed by the Tyrant, leaving the BSB to kill off some Clan Rats. I don't think there's any wounds done back because the one of the magic items that the Bruiser has is the Helm, which lets you re-roll wounds.
Yeah,
and
Trickster's Helm.
Normally, that's not an item that catches my eye because a lot of the armies I field tend to have T3 or 4 characters, which is pretty easy to overcome. But if you have a character with T5 out there and a lot of wounds, that could be a surprisingly useful item.
Yeah, it's a little... I've run it on my orcs in the past, and it's a little dangerous there because if you go up against things like Bloodletters, they're psyched to reroll wounds because all they want to do is try to kill and blow you. And it actually increases the chance of killing blows. So it's dangerous on a small guy, but on a monstrous infantry, perfectly safe. It's a great option.
So I believe we lose that combat and run away successfully.
Yeah, I decided to reform to face that A-bomb that's coming my way, and just let them run, thinking that they're probably not going to rally, and if they do, well, it's not a huge mess of points. It didn't seem to be worth the risk. I got the banner and I killed the BSB, which is what I was trying to do anyway.
That, again, is another sort of 8th edition tactic, and it's occasionally a point of contention. People didn't like the idea of combat reforming, where you can, after winning a round of combat, you can reform in any direction and then get ready to charge next turn. But again, I think it makes the game much more dynamic and puts the emphasis much more on combat. And now you have a situation like this where his Iron Guts have broken one unit and can now turn around and charge another one.
Yeah. So on my turn, of course, I'm got to charge that A-bomb. It's charge or be charged, and I'd rather give him the impact hits as opposed to take them. And I'm hoping here to overrun into those little guys. The charge, of course, goes through. I don't get the D3 impact hits, but my dog moves up to block off the Death Frenzy guys.
No!
And at this point, I think I could have risked it and just let them try for the charge on the Iron Guts, knowing that they probably weren't going to roll that high. And I could have saved the points on my little dog and just tried to hide him from the slings. But I thought I'd play it safe and sacrifice him. In the close combat phase, I break the arm right off the A-bomb as I kill it. It's pretty unfortunate. Easy repair, right?
Yeah. Some people would be happy with killing the model, but
yeah,
Matt
I wanted
really likes
to
to let
break
you know
it.
he's won something.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to break it, and hopefully break your spirits with it.
It's a crap model anyway.
So the two wounds I needed to do, I was able to get through. He's dead. Everybody's happy. And then Chris puts down a counter. I didn't really know what it was for. Whatever. I decided to overrun, trying to hit the little guys. And unfortunately, I couldn't get them because they failed the panic check when the A-bomb died and they ran away.
They legged it.
All right, your turn.
All right, that little counter that he put down is sort of the bane of people everywhere. It represents the too horrible to die rule for the Abomination. And Who can guess I rolled a 6 and had to get back up? You all could? That's what I thought. The Abomination does, in fact, get back up with his full compartment of wounds back. And at this point, I think Matt does take a moment to cry, so we refresh our drinks and stuff like that, and then get back to the game. So it's top of 6. Storm Vermin charge in at the last dog. Comes to the compulsory phase. Yago hits the rear of the Iron Guts. They quickly make way to get the characters back in there to fight. And all of my fleeing units on the table continue to do so. The giant rats head towards the board edge but don't leave. The Team Cloak there keeps fleeing back, does stay on the table. The clan rats, however, leave the board, so they and their points are gone.
Now, had I not sacrificed my dog here, had I moved him out to the flank, I could have chased off one of these fleeing units during my turn. And like I said before, I'm not so certain that this sacrifice was necessary, because you would have had to roll like a 9 or a 10 to be able to charge into my Iron Guts. So, live and learn.
And the end was also, it was only 21 points that you threw away, but if it could have nabbed you another 90 to 100 points, then yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Always hard to tell. But the dog itself is chopped down, of course. About 5 more Storm Vermin dies. So as you can see, that unit is looking pretty thin right now. I think it's taken over 50% casualties from the Skaven brew.
Yeah, it's taken 19 casualties, which I was pretty happy with.
I wouldn't say that I was happy with it, but they were still around by this point, so again, it could be worse. The Abomination charges in. It does impact hits, which get distributed throughout the group. In this case, the irregular, the Musician and the Champion end up getting killed off, leaving the Standard Bearer, which is a little outside the normal combat rules, but we're dealing with randomly allocated damage here. Yago puts some more wounds on the characters, maybe takes a wound or 2, and sticks around.
Attacks back. I only landed like 3 wounds, which was pretty disappointing, and he regened all of them.
Yeah, he was kind of
really
on fire
great
at that point.
Yeah, if only one Man-Eater shot had gone through, just one, I wouldn't be facing this, and
that's right.
The battle would be looking pretty good for me with this A-bomb dead. But unfortunately, he's not dead. In the close combat phase, I lost my banner bearer, and again, I was able to put 0 wounds on the A-bomb. Luckily, I got the Crown of Command, rerollable, so I stick around. Yeah. The end of the game, though, leaves me with just those 2 characters and nothing else, which is pretty terrible. Chris still has his big frenzied unit, his general, the fresh A-bomb, and a bunch of fleeing units who are still worth their points. So the victory goes to Chris by not very narrow margin, but not a massacre either.
Minor victory.
Minor victory. Now, this game could have changed pretty dramatically had I played a little smarter. There were a bunch of little mistakes, but the biggest moment that I saw that just really could have swung things was if I had redirected my charge with the Saber Tusk, who charged through the rats on turn, I believe it was turn 4. Had I redirected into the clan rats, knowing that my Iron Guts were going to hit the rat ogres and overrun, I would then be able to fight that close combat phase then, and pretty easily win that combat. And then I would be able to chase down the clan rats with the dog, getting him safely out of the way. And I'd also be able to reform with my Iron Guts in a much safer position. Unfortunately, I didn't do that. I just didn't think of it. And I also didn't think, I guess I shouldn't have planned for this. I didn't think the A-bomb was going to pop back up. So, how did you feel about the performance of your army? Any units that were particular stars, or any you're thinking of replacing?
As usual, the Abomination did a huge job, taking out both the Iron Blasters and the Lead Belchers, just doing lots of damage over there overall. The Rat Ogres really did their job too, hanging out and waiting for the right time to strike, and then pouncing on the bulls to help win that combat. Pretty much everyone performed well. The only sort of downside I saw to the performances were the Storm Vermin and them getting pretty removed from all the combats, but they lived, so they didn't give their points up. So that's a big thing on their side. And under most circumstances, the frenzy only would help the unit out. So I think perhaps if I had focused more on getting some of those support units out of the way, the Ratticus would have been freer to go and cause some more damage. But overall, I've been playing the army for a while. I like the general unit sizes of these different regiments, and they work together really well.
Well, my army did not work for me on the table today, but I don't think that that's the army's fault. I think I just was not playing the units the way they're supposed to be played. This is actually my first game with the new Ogre book, and it's only my third game ever playing Ogres in any edition. My second game playing Ogres was against Chris last time, and my first game was right when I first bought the models, must have been 3 years ago. This is just kind of a hobby army that I have off to the side that I've been painting very slowly and collecting slowly. I think if I practice with a little more, I'll be able to better use the units the way they're supposed to be used. I think the Man-Eaters could have been more effective, and I think the 2 Iron Blasters could have been way more effective had I not set them up to die. That was just poor overrunning, poor redirection, rather. The Bulls, not sold on their effectiveness, but I also am not eager to paint up a whole other unit for the army anytime soon. Like I said, I just painted up those 4 handgun Man-Eaters, the 3 Saber-Tusks, and the Fire Belly just yesterday. And I'd like to take probably a little break from this army as far as painting goes and just play with what I've got for a little while.
Adding one character like the Fire Belly to that unit Bulls makes them 3x3.
That's true, and it does give them flaming, and he's a little extra punch. I also got to kind of get practice on where my characters should go. If anybody has any suggestions, let me know. I'm thinking I might change it up and bring back my Butcher model. I'm thinking maybe a level 1 Butcher that just gets added to a unit to add a little extra punch because he does have a high toughness, immune to poison, and more wounds than a standard bull. Maybe I could add a level 1 Butcher to the unit of bulls, have a level 4 Slaughtermaster who's Lord of Death, and then have a Fire Belly. And that's a really nasty magic phase. It's a lot of points and characters, unfortunately, but I think that would be a pretty fun little list to play with, too. I'll probably experiment with that soon. So overall, it was a really good game, and Chris outplayed me, and had one lucky roll, but he was winning anyway at that point. So it was hard fought, but the Golden Mini this week goes to Chris. So Season 2, 1 episode in, 1 loss. I'm hoping to reverse that. Next week I'm going to be playing local softie, Paul Gates of the Lost Legion. I'm kidding. He's not a soft player at all. He's consistently top 5 for general at a lot of big events. He's also a really great painter, and he just happens to, at every GT he goes to, something happens where one of his scores is just a point or 2 below where you'd think it'd be, and he keeps himself out of that top spot. But he's very consistently top 5 overall.
He was 3rd overall at the Crossroads this year, and I think the last 2 events he was in the top 10.
Yeah, Crossroads last year, I think he was 5th.
I think so.
Yeah, so he's a great player, and he's always near the top, but just never quite at the top. I'm pretty excited to play that. I'm not sure what army I'm going to play. I really want to play my Beastmen, but like I said, got to get Brian Johnson to finish off the rest of the army so I can get it on the table. And for the rest of the season, I'm not sure who else I'm going to be playing, but I've got my new Tomb King's army I'm going to debut, the new Beastmen, my updated Orcs, and I might be bringing back the Purple Legion. I have a couple units that I'm assembling, trying to make it 8th viable. That's probably my best looking army, and I'm really excited about adding some Blood Crushers to it and a few more models to make my small units 8th edition worthy. Alright, thanks. Bye.